Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, May 23rd, 2014. A lot of national media sites today started out with the Veterans Administration. Big story, I'll get to that, but my big stories are overseas. And I want to just start with this one in the USA Today. It's a funny headline. Russia hopes China will protect its gas. And it really doesn't grasp what's going on. It does talk about a $400 billion oil and natural gas deal over 30 years, a big deal between China and Russia. It excludes the use of the U.S. dollar. That's the big deal. Oh, there's plenty of still dollar trade going on in the world, but let's grasp this here. This is the number one oil and natural gas producer in the world, Russia, doing business with the number one consumer of oil and natural gas in the world, that'd be China. They've got a deal over 30 years. They're not using the dollar. How long might it take before the rest of the world decides to at least accept other currencies like, Saudi Arabia? What do you suppose might happen to the dollar if it's no longer the exclusive currency of oil trade? Well, a lot of people wouldn't need dollars anymore, and all these trillions and trillions of dollars that are held abroad in these liquid dollar assets, like treasuries, they'd come home. What do you suppose would happen to the value of the dollar when the United States was flooded with these dollars that come from abroad? Yeah, inflation. Lots of inflation. Now, I had a guest on this week, analyst Charles Nenner, who says, the beginning of the end of the dollar, the collapse of the dollar is going to happen by the end of 2014. It's the beginning of it. And, I just wonder how fast this thing might collapse. Maybe it's already beginning. Meanwhile, in the U.S. Senate, instead of figuring out, what are we going to do to kind of keep the dollar strong, and maybe we should cut some of this budget and cut off some of this debt, and maybe we should really show the world we're really going to get our house in order and get things together. Even if we do have a little recession, we need to really cut back. No. Half the Senate voted this week to tell the Washington Redskins football team to change their name. They don't like Redskins. Now, listen, no slight against the, Native Americans here, but America as a country has much bigger problems to worry about. And the loss of the dollar as the petrodollar, people say, the dollar's not backed by anything. Oh, yeah, it is. It's backed by something, backed by oil, and people having to use it to buy oil. So they need dollars. And what happens if India says, you mean you'll take rupees? You mean we don't have to have dollars? And what happens if Europe says, Russia, you mean you want us to buy rubles to buy, you're not going to take dollars anymore. Is the Senate that stupid? They don't realize what's going on in the world around them. But the big problem they needed to vote on was we wanted the Washington Redskins football team to change its name. We have to have some of the dumbest leaders on the planet. We simply have to. And then there's the deal between Russia and Iran. My top stories involve Iran, Russia, China. So here's the next big story that I think is a huge story. The deal that is being hammered out between Russia and Iran for Russia to build 8 nuclear power plants. And I know you're probably thinking, didn't we have some kind of an ongoing negotiation between the West and the East and Iran, and these negotiations in Geneva where they're going to try to curtail Iran's nuclear program? And now Russia's going to build 8 nuclear reactors in Iran? And haven't I been telling you all along that the Obama administration is talking about curtailing their program, and Iran's out in Geneva and other places around the world? We're not going to curtail our program. Well, obviously they're not. So this actually is not a bad play by Iran. Iran has a lot of uranium. It'd be smart for them to use nuclear power and not use so much of their oil. That said, Iran has always said this is for the peaceful production of energy. But the West continues to say, we don't think so. We think it could be so they can make lots of nuclear weapons. We've come to a fork in the road with this prospective deal. Somebody is going to have to back down. Is that going to be Iran? It doesn't look like it. Is that going to be the U.S. and the West, Great Britain and France and Germany? Well, you see how, they got in line with the sanctions against Russia? Not. Somebody's going to have to back down and lose face. Or we're going to have one heck of a war. I hope somebody backs down. Also this week, Russia test-fired a brand new nuclear warhead. Putin's not trying to send a signal to the West, is he? It's reported the Russian military is reportedly testing a new combat load. Their words, quote, combat load, end quote. The missiles are reportedly also hypersonic, hard to shoot down, super fast. Hard to shoot down. And they're testing these new missiles and combat loads to try to, get around to thwart the defenses of NATO. And they're testing nuclear weapons. Just a coincidence, right? With all this Ukraine crisis and sanctions back and forth and tit for tat and Vladimir Putin saying, hey, this is going to blow up in your face and, that there's going to be repercussions, unintended consequences. Well, a lot of folks in Congress saying, hey, wait a minute. They violated, multiple strategic arms treaties, including one signed in 2010 with the Obama administration and the Russians. Putin's like, we're going to test hypersonic missiles with combat payloads. The warheads, the missiles have 10 warheads on them. 10. One missile, 10 nuclear warheads. Just stupefying things in the news. Back here in the United States of America, we have another Obama administration scandal, and this time it involves the Veteran Administration and vets dying while they're waiting for medical care. And the Veteran Administration ginning up phony wait times to make it look like they're giving better treatment to veterans than they really are. It's, absolutely unbelievable. Then you have the president out this week in a stern speech, and he says, that it's dishonorable and disgraceful and period. And, we've heard the period before. You can keep your medical care, period. If you like it, you can keep it, period. It's dishonorable and disgraceful. And then he says something to the effect of, if these charges prove to be true. What? They were true in 2008, Mr. President, when you were running for the White House. You said you were going to fix the Veterans Administration system and give veterans better care. Here we are, 2014, and, well, they're not getting good care. Oh, that's dishonorable and disgraceful, according to the president. I mean, people in Gitmo get better care. Terrorists in Gitmo get way better care than our own military people. And, for all the people who think, well, the military is going to get behind the president for this New World Order thing, really? The military they think that the Obama administration hates them. I mean, if you're in the military and you're watching the veterans going, whew, that's me? That could happen to me? They don't care about us? It is disgraceful. It's disgraceful that the president has allowed this to go on since he was in office and he campaigned on this. But we got the Obamacare. And speaking of Obamacare, I wonder why he looked really tense when he was talking about the Veterans Administration. Let's see. Veterans Administration is government health care. Obamacare, government health care. Veterans died while they're on waiting lists. That means... could people on Obamacare die while they're on a waiting list in government health care? Bing, 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 bing. Speaking of scandals, Nancy Pelosi, she is the minority person for the Democrats in the House of Representatives. The Republicans are in the majority. She was the Speaker of the House. She's now the minority leader, and says, Democrats are going to join this Benghazi committee. They're rolling everything into one committee, and we're worried about the Republicans being fair. What? You're worried about them being fair? Why don't we just worry about release the documents? I mean, the Obama administration is supposed to be the most transparent administration. That's what he sold himself as. It's going to be the most transparent administration in history, and it's the least transparent administration in history. Even people at the New York Times have said that. It's the least, the worst that they've ever seen. Just release the documents. Why did this happen? Why was there a stand-down order? Why didn't you do everything you could to save them? Why all the lies afterwards? There was 4 Americans that were murdered by Al-Qaeda-linked terrorists, and it wasn't because of an anti-Islamic movie. It wasn't a spontaneous attack. You don't bring, rocket-propelled grenades and mortars to a protest outside our consulate in Benghazi. We didn't do everything we could to help them. And then afterwards, Hillary Clinton is on the runway in Dover, telling the families, "Oh, we're going to get the people that made that anti-Islamic movie." She was on the phone with Gregory Hicks the night of the attack. Gregory Hicks in Libya told Hillary Clinton on the phone, according to congressional testimony, yeah, it was an Al-Qaeda attack. It wasn't a protest. No. Even the Prime Minister of Libya said, "Oh, no, not a protest. It wasn't a video. No, this was an Al-Qaeda-related attack." Yet they came out with all these crazy lies about how it's just Islamic video and the president's in front of the United Nations. And just listen, this isn't stop. Just release all the documents. Be fair. Isn't the truth fair? The truth is the truth. But of course, what this really is, it's protecting the president's legacy and protecting Hillary Clinton, who is the front runner for the Democrats, at least right now, for the presidency, for the Democratic nomination in 2016. And when you ask simple questions like, where was the president? I don't know. Well, we don't know. I don't know. Really? You don't know where the president is? Let me tell you something about the president and the Secret Service. They know where he is every millisecond of every day, even when he's in the White House. Hey, they know where he is. He doesn't just get lost. They know where the president is every second of every day. They know where he is. They can't even answer that question. Where was the president? Next up, we just had the Senate who supports the nomination of the guy that came up that basically gave political cover to the drone murder program. They don't call it the drone murder program, but I do, because that's exactly what it is. It is the drone murder program. And, Harvard law professor, he was a State Department official at the time. He came up with these memos. They were secret. They got released. But now he's a Harvard law professor. He's David Barron. And he came up with the political cover, the justification that you could just murder people with a drone. That he basically said it wasn't so unconstitutional. But it is unconstitutional. Many say it is, including myself. I mean, it's clearly unconstitutional to kill Americans abroad. It's clearly, I think, a war crime to kill thousands of people abroad, not on the battlefield, just, people that you think are terrorists, suspected terrorists. But this really gets sticky when it comes to Americans, 4 Americans. The White House, the administration admits they killed 4 Americans abroad, including a 16-year-old boy killed in a separate attack from his father, who was also a suspected terrorist. No charges, no trial, no jury, no judge, 0 due process afforded in the U.S. Constitution. And David Barron, who was nominated for a First Circuit Court of Appeals judge position, he just basically, moved forward for that position. And even Ron Wyden, the liberal Democrat who stood up with Rand Paul about the using drones on Americans here in America, even Ron Wyden, the liberal Democrat, voted for David Barron to be on the First Circuit Court of Appeals as a judge. Ron Wyden, really? Really, you call yourself a liberal? And this guy who basically says murder is completely constitutional and legal in a memo, and you're good with that as a judge? Really? Oh, and by the way, along with the thousands of people killed abroad, at least 100 children were killed as collateral damage. Killed some kids. We suspected their parents were terrorists. We killed some kids. Boy, isn't that the way to win hearts and minds of people abroad? Kill their children with a drone? You got some Nimrod, in the military flying a drone around. That's the judge. That's the jury. That's the executioner. There are no charges. Just some Nimrod on a joystick killing some people with a drone. Is this my target? Okay. It's bad policy, and it's completely unconstitutional. I personally think it is criminal activity. It's unbelievable that this guy is going to be on the First Circuit Court of Appeals. Unbelievable. Next up, look where they report this. Let me get this in focus for you here. Just a little story in the newspaper. You would think this is like a cat caught in the tree. Bank to pay $2.6 billion fine over secret accounts. This is Credit Suisse. $2.6 billion fine. A little story here, just a little mention in the newspaper. Yeah, $2,600 million is what $2.6 billion fine is. This, according to the Justice Department, this fine is for a criminal tax case, tax evasion, helping wealthy Americans avoid paying taxes. And according to the Justice Department, did I tell you they said it was criminal? Yes, the Justice Department boasts that it's the biggest fine ever in a criminal tax case. Wow, thanks. Well, a fine certainly substitutes for criminal charges and criminal criminal prosecution and jail times of top bankers. And didn't Attorney General Eric Holder recently say no bank is too big to jail? Well, apparently this one's too big to jail. And as I've said, wouldn't Bernie Madoff would have loved to pay a fine and get out of going to prison for, the rest of his life? And another thing that gripes me is that you think, they're going to pay $2.6 billion. That bankers aren't going to be paying that. The top executives aren't going to be paying that. They ought to personally, they ought to at least personally pay that. They ought to make nothing for years. They ought to come back after everything they own. They ought to be penniless. But who pays for this? $2.6 billion fine? The shareholders, just like Jamie Dimon and all the, 23 some odd $billion in a little more than a year. Who paid for that? The shareholders, not Jamie Dimon. Not the executives of Credit Suisse. No, shareholders. They pay for it. And in the last several months, I can't tell you how many times the Justice Department has come up with a fine, and they either paid a fine to avoid criminal charges, or they paid a fine in a criminal tax case, or paid a fine for crime. They've said this many times. How can you tell a society is in decay when, they let the top people off by just paying a fine? Actually, they don't even pay it. The shareholders pay the fines. It's disgusting. Thank you for supporting USA Watchdog with your comments and donations. That's the way I see it. I'm Greg Hunter. Have a nice weekend.